So in order to do this, I'll go ahead and create some templates. I'll create a template for the cell. So I have a sodium unit. It might have 50, 60, 70 cells in it. So I know I'm going to be creating lots of these cells, so I'm going to create this as an element template. I'll do a new template. The template I'm just going to call a cell. Now within that cell, we're also going to be adding other templates. There's going to be a level transmitter and a temperature transmitter template. One of the more interesting things you can do in templates here is you can create both the template and the reference type from this user interface right here. Now you will notice that you can go in here and create reference types on your own. That's not really how we recommend creating reference types. It's not the easiest way. The easiest way is to just generate a brand new template from here, and as we do that template, we will build a new reference type for that template, specifically for that template. Let me demonstrate. I've created my template. I want to create a new template, and I do a right click, and this time I'm going to be choosing a new referenced template. That's the reserved word we use to indicate that this is going to be, it's basically going to be a new template and a new reference type at the same time. When I choose this, all I need to do is specify the name of the template. I'll be able to modify the template in a second, so don't worry about that. And for this, let's go with the let's start with the temperature transmitter. Since I checked this edit reference type, the first dialog box I'm going to see is the dialog box that defines the reference type that's going to be associated with this. So I'd like to go ahead and select that so that I do get the option to set what the whether this is a strong or a weak or a composition reference type. So I'll go ahead and select that. I'll choose, this is the reference type definition here. I'm going to choose just the strong composition or the strong reference type. And what that means is the strong reference type indicates that this, as long as you've got at least one parent that has that strong reference type, we won't delete the child. And for most general purposes, the strong reference type is fine. Now, for this particular reference type, if you notice, I have something we haven't seen before within AF, and that is we have the ability to specify what are the permitted parent elements. So what this is doing is it's taking a look at my current structure of my element template hierarchy, and it's saying these are the valid parent and children that you can choose from. Or you could simply say any, in which case this really wouldn't be any different than the regular parent-child type. The parent-child type can have any parent, any child. But in this case, I wanted to specifically say, let's restrict this so that the parent can only be a cell and the child can only be a temperature transmitter. Now that's not going to limit people to only this reference type, but it's going to give them a good clue. This will appear whenever you create a cell reference or an element reference within a cell. Whenever you create that element reference, it's going to recognize that this reference type, we're calling cell temp transmitter, that reference type is one of your choices. And for the rest of this, I'm just going to go ahead and keep the defaults. I would like to keep this name. The name defaults to, it's basically the name of the parent and the name of the child. So this reference type is going to be called cell temp transmitter. That's a brand new reference type. Now, at this point, I'm defining the template itself. And if I wanted to add attributes, I can do that. I'm not going to go that far in this example, so I'll just go ahead and check this in. So what have we done? We've created an element template called temp transmitter. We've also created, if we take a look at the reference types, a reference type called cell temp transmitter. Well, what can be done with this? If I go out here and let's add a brand new cell. This is our sodium unit. I'm going to create a cell and check this in. Watch what happens when I try to create a child element. One of the options we're going to have now when we create this new child element is, you notice we have a new reference type. We can specify that this is a cell temp transmitter reference type. And notice what selecting that does. Look at the difference. If I choose cell temp transmitter, then the only child elements can be temperature transmitter elements. Okay, that's the only one you're restricted to because of how we define that reference type. See, if I had chosen parent-child, then I could have chosen any of my element templates. But when I choose this reference type, we're limited to just the reference types or the element templates that reference type supports. So it's a way of kind of enforcing a structure on your AF. And there we have our structure the way I wanted it to be, using reference types that define what element templates can be used within certain elements. Let's continue. I'm going to go back in here. Let's create another. So we have a cell and it's got a temp transmitter. And by the way, you can look at the hierarchy that we're creating here by viewing it slightly different. Instead of arranging it by template inheritance, if I can arrange by template references, so you can see now that cell is a template reference to this temp transmitter. So that's showing you what the hierarchy actually is. I'll go ahead and arrange this back the normal way. Okay, so far so good. Let's go ahead and create another element template. This time it's going to be the level transmitter. So we'll do a right mouse click. Again, instead of doing a new element template at this point, okay, instead of a new template at this point, what I'm doing is this new referenced template. That's going to create a reference type and an element template. So this is going to be called, let's call this level transmitters. And I want to edit the reference type here. Now this is going to have the same properties as the previous one. It's going to be a strong reference type. Look at the name. It's called cell level transmitters, indicating that we would like the relationship here to be defining the relationship between the cell and the level transmitters in that cell. And that's why the only allowed parent is the cell. The only allowed child is going to be the level transmitters. I'll go ahead and say OK on that. Now that I've done that, now I can define, let's go back into my elements here, and let's define another element here. This new child element is going to have that new reference type. So as you can see, we get new reference types. Now that I'm choosing cell, or now that I've chosen cell, and cell is a valid parent for these reference types, they all appear in that list, in addition to the 3 standards. Now we've actually got, we may have plans in the future to allow you to restrict your creation to just reference types like this. Right now you have the option of choosing these others, but we're considering having a way to restrict this so that you will just allow people to build the reference types that you're interested in, have some kind of enforcement of a structure within AF. So I'm going to choose level transmitters. The only element template type I can hook up that way, or I can link that way, is this level transmitters. And there we go. We'll go ahead and check this in. So now we've got cell 1 with this temperature transmitter and level transmitters. I'm going to copy these over, just do a real quick copy and scale up from here. Now, if you remember, you can copy by holding down the control key. So I'll just go ahead and hold down control, click on cell, and drop it into sodium unit. And there, that creates a cell 2. I'm going to have to change these. I intend to use these in a common structure in just a little bit. So I'm going to have to change the names. Those names are going to have to be unique if they're within common structures. And I'll hold down control and do that one more time. There's cell 3. And we'll change this to level transmitter 3.